right, welcome to Pocket Vision Fantasy Football, where the only thing we don't know about sports is what the name of this show will be next week. Today we're going to be talking comprehensive draft strategies, everything from quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, different strategies, all the different players, and get you ready for your draft coming up this weekend. I want to go ahead and toss it to Marcus, and we're going to talk about some strategies.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be the hero running back strategy is my favorite. It allows you to be the most flexible that you can be. Ideally, you're going to draft one of those three studs you see there in the first round. If you're not lucky enough to get one of those guys, though, you're still going to want to get one of those anchor guys in the second round. And then after that, just go after all the other positions. And try to be as elite as you can at wide receiver. Make sure you're getting a really good quarterback, an elite tight end. And not focus on that second RB until at least the round 6 at the earliest. For me, it's more like round 7 and 8 before I'd be looking for my second running back. But I think hero running back would be my most preferred because it's flexible.
And zero running back is my personal favorite on leagues with very deep roster spots where there's, 3 receivers, multiple flex, 1 tight end, and a couple running backs. I am pounding a receiver early and often, like the first 6 picks, taking a receiver, maybe getting a tight end in there, and then maybe 7, 8 running backs later in the draft, hoping 2 of those guys will hit. That's my potential league favorite.
On the other side of the coin, in leagues where you only have to start 2 wide receivers, I like to go heavy on running back. That's not to say that, the top 3 are gone and then all the best receivers are there. I'm still going to flip to receiver there, but my goal is going to be to get at least 2 quality running backs, if not 3 in the first 3 rounds.
I think all these strategies can work out great, but the absolute key is making sure you're flexible. You might go into a draft thinking, oh, I want a bunch of running backs, but if that's what everybody thinks, you might have to pivot off that and start scooping up wide receivers. You can gain a lot of value doing it that way.
So let's go ahead, guys, and jump into our ADP, our average draft position for quarterbacks. This is the chalk picks across provided by Fantasy Pros, but it's a combination of ESPN, Sleeper, and Yahoo rankings. That's pretty much the chalk picks, but I guess we'll toss to Marcus and see where we find some value.
For me this year, it's going to be Kyler Murray. He's my guy. He's typically ranked going to be right around just inside the top 10 quarterbacks. I've got him in my top 5. Last year, he was top 10 in points per game, coming off an ACL injury. He's been top 5 in average points per game since he came into the league. He offers 500 plus rushing yards upside, 5 plus touchdowns with his legs. That's something that I want to see in my quarterback. And he's got an elite wide receiver this year and tight end, both ranked, in the top 10 and top 5, respectively at their positions, and a pass catching running back. So if all of these guys are being considered, elite players at their positions, then I think Kyler's just set up for a smash year. Arizona's defense is not very good. It's going to be forcing Murray into comeback mode a lot of games. And so far, the positive vibes from training camp have been things that I've been liking to hear. Coach saying leaps and bounds ahead of where he was last year. I think Kyler Murray is set up for a smash spot to crush his ADP this year.
I love Kyler Murray as well, but if he's gone in drafts, typically I'm looking to grab another quarterback with some rushing ability, and that's Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels, I have as a quarterback 10. Typically, he's a little bit later than that. He had over 1,000 yards in rushing in college, and that's where sacks count against you as negative yards. So 1,000 rushing yards in college is actually very, very good, and he wants to break more rushing records in the NFL. But he can also throw the deep ball. His preseason game, last game, looked very good in his 3rd preseason game. Touchdown pass, 40 yards to Dyami Brown, and then a fake handoff to Austin Eckler, tucked it, rushed for a touchdown. I love quarterbacks that can run the ball, and that's typically who I'm targeting later in drafts, and he's right around the range where I'm usually looking to take a quarterback.
All right, so who do we like in these quarterback battles? Do we like Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes?
I personally like Patrick Mahomes. I think he's going to have a bounce back season. We saw him probably at the worst fantasy year of his career last year, but he's no longer thrown to Valdez Scantling. Adding Xavier Worthy and Marquise Hollywood Brown, that offense is going to be so much more dynamic. I think we're going to see something, closer to his, 40 touchdown, 5,000 seasons that we've seen in the past.
I lean Jalen Hurts just for the rushing upside.
I don't think you can go wrong with either one of these quarterbacks, but for me, it's Jalen Hurts by just a little bit, the tush push, and they are all in for the Eagles, bringing in another receiver just this last week with a trade.
I'm going to agree with Zach. I think Mahomes last year had a floor year, and it was still a decent floor year. I think Kansas City's offense is set up to explode this year with all the new playmakers that they have, and Mahomes is going to lead the league in touchdowns once again.
And then what about CJ and Anthony Richardson?
For me, it's Anthony Richardson. It's another quarterback that has the ability to break fantasy. Now, this guy has the most points per quarter that we've seen ever in his limited action. So if he can produce what he's done before and get a couple rushing touchdowns every quarter, we could really see some crazy upside with Anthony Richardson.
Emphasis on the word limited in what you just said there, Eric. We've seen very little from Anthony Richardson. And, I watched the Bengals Colts preseason game, and honestly, he looked terrible against the Bengals too. So now they weren't letting him run, so I think we're going to see a better product in the regular season. But honestly, Richardson just scares me. And then Stroud has a new weapon in Stephon Diggs. I think he could easily hit the 5,000 passing yard mark.
I do think it's close, but I'm taking Richardson. I think CJ is the safer pick. But Richardson does have a high floor with the rushing. I mean, unless he's going to get benched, he's going to get a decent amount of rushing yards every game. And I do think that I had him last year. He had a 18-point quarter, like Eric was saying. It was amazing. He didn't even finish the quarter, and then he got a full fantasy game's worth of points.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Richardson because of his legs. But I definitely think CJ Stroud has that ability to lead the league in passing yards this year. So I don't think you can go wrong with either one.
Are you guys taking any people for your long shot picks? Anybody outside those guys who we like?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. I expect a bounce back year. I think last year was just got unlucky in the red zone. The touchdowns just didn't come, and that was kind of what kept him lower and not returning his value last year. I expect Lawrence to have a big back this season.
For me, it's Levis from the Tennessee Titans. They're all in on him this year. They're bringing in more receivers. All of his running backs are all pass catchers, and the whole offense is going to move through Will Levis. So if I miss on my quarterbacks, Daniels and Murray early, I'm typically looking for Levis later in the draft.
I don't know if it counts as a long shot, but he's far enough in ADP where I think it's worth discussing. But the guy who led the league in passing yards last year was Tua. So I like him and just, pray for a better, touchdown luck than he got last year.
And I'm targeting Jared Goff. I think the Lions are going to have the best offense in all of football this year. He's got so many weapons. He's got multiple running backs. He's got a great tight end, an elite wide receiver. I think the opportunity is there for him to really exceed where he's being drafted.
All right, let's move on to running backs. We got this is again our average draft position for across ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper. And these are the chalk picks, but let's talk about who you like. I think Zach, you got somebody in mind?
Yeah, one guy I really like, if you missed that first tier or two of running backs, is James Cook. He only had 2 rushing touchdowns last year and still managed to finish, around 11th or 12th on the season in either half PPR or full PPR. He's in a great offense and totaled nearly 1,600 yards last season between passing and receiving. I think the opportunity to catch more passes is there with the departure of Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. And they started using him more at the end of last season. He had at least 16 carries in 7 of the last 9 games, including the playoff games. He only did that once in the first 10. So he was trending towards being, a workhorse in that offense.
And going a little bit later on, I'm targeting Zamir White in my leagues, especially when I'm not going running back heavy early on and I'm looking for someone a little bit later. Zamir White did great when he filled in at the end of the season last year for Josh Jacobs, who is now gone. He's in Green Bay. And he, over those last 4 games that he did start, he had 114 yards per game, average from scrimmage. And I will say that if you're in a full PPR league, one knock on White is I don't think he's going to catch a lot of passes because they did bring in Addison, and I think he'll be the third down receiving back guy. But I do expect White to have at least 50 to 60% of the carries, and he'll have an opportunity to lead that backfield.
And for me, it's Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks is a hammer, and I wouldn't be surprised to see over 50% of winning teams having him on their roster because you're going to get a hammer late in your draft. He is great. He's a 3-down running back. He can catch the ball. Now, he's not someone you're going to pick if you want early production. But after week 8, I would not be surprised for him getting 20 fantasy points per game. So they've upgraded the offensive line. They just brought in 2 guards. They've upgraded the offense with Diontae Johnson and Xavier Legette. So I would like to see them improve and just be more productive, which allows more opportunities for Brooks this year.
And sticking with the running backs, let's get on to some battles. So, Zach, who do you like between Bijan and Breece Hall?
Can I say both? I think both are in awesome spots, but between the two, I think I'm taking Breece Hall. We got a glimpse of his greatness last year in a few games, and that was with Zach Wilson at quarterback. Fully recovered from that injury and playing with Aaron Rodgers, he's got 20 touchdown upside now, and we all know what he can do as far as highlights go.
For me, it's going to be about safety. I think a lot of people are going to be stuck this weekend with thinking, who do I click, Bijan or Breece? I'm going to be clicking Breece Hall if it's my choice, just because we've seen him do it. We're projecting Bijan, and I like Bijan this year, and I do think he's going to hit that ceiling. But when it comes down to it, we would be picking Breece to do something we already saw him do towards the end of last year, being one of the best running backs. So for me, it would be Breece Hall.
To me, it's Bijan Robinson. He's my number 1 running back this year. Once the Jets took Braylon Allen in the draft, who is like a big, strong running back, it kind of makes me think that they think Breece Hall is more of that 3rd down running back and not the hammer, not going to get that early down work, maybe lose some goal line carries as well. So that scares me, the Braylon Allen pick. So I am all for Bijan Robinson this year.
I personally like Breece Hall. And next up, moving on a little bit later in the drafts, we have Achane and Joe Mixon. Who you guys got? Marcus, who you like?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Devon Achane. Last year, we saw just how explosive he can be, and that Miami offense is just perfect. Even if he takes a slight dip in efficiency, I still think that it's set up for him to explode. Mostert last year just had a very good, fortunate run of not getting injured. And we saw in his history that's just not who he is. He is somebody who typically misses some time. So I like Achane there for sure just because of the upside.
Yeah, Achane for me as well. Nothing really to add to that.
And I will have to go with both these running backs are good. I'm gonna be on the side of youth with Devon Achane, but I would be happy with both these running backs on my team.
So we're all on Achane. I like Mixon. I think he's been rock solid. He hasn't gotten hurt. He rarely misses games, and he's going to be in a great Houston offense. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to score.
And what about your other long shot pick guys? Who are you taking? You like anybody deep down the list you think has high upside?
Yeah, long shot target for me is Blake Corum. If something were to happen to Kyren Williams, say he gets put on punt returns or something like that, Blake Corum steps into a heavier workload. He could easily be a top 10 running back this year.
In a similar situation as Benson of the Arizona Cardinals, exact same thing with James Conner. He has it's another great offense that's going to score points, and if anything were to happen to Conner, then the door's wide open for Benson to be a slam dunk late in your draft.
A guy that I've been liking is Chase Brown. I think it's set up for him to do very well in the Bengals offense. He avoided P. Ryan coming back or them signing any other running backs to take away some opportunities. I think Zach Moss is just a guy in that offense that's not going to get a lot of the high value opportunities where Chase is going to be involved a lot in the passing game. That's somebody that I want.
For me, I like to team up a couple running backs. So Benson and James Conner both go late, and you can have all of the Arizona Cardinals running backs doing that combination. Same thing with Brooks and Hubbard. I like getting both of those guys late. It doesn't cost you very much, and you have whoever's the running back, you're good to go. And the same thing, if you grab a Jerome Ford late, you're going to have the starting running back for that team. So you're going to have some studs to start right away until your roster shorts out and you figure out who's you're going to need later on in the year.
All right, moving on to wide receivers. Obviously we got the guys at the top: Tyreek, CeeDee, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're all seeing it. It's a lot of talent. Even in this second tier group, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Jaylen Waddle, tons of upside, and even down here at Tank Dell, T. Higgins, all these guys. A lot to choose from. But is there somewhere that you guys are really finding value? Marcus, is there someone you like?
Yeah, for me, it's Jayden Waddle. I've got him as my wide receiver 15 this year, and he's basically going outside the top 20 on the two most popular sites. The last 3 years, he's in half PPR leagues, he's had finishes of 7th in 2021, 15th in 2022, and last year 33rd, but he also missed 3+ games and would have been on pace to hit top 20. Last year, he saw a 27% target share with Tyreek Hill on the field. That's an elite target share for a number one wide receiver in most offenses, and he's pulling it off even with Hill there and an elite Miami offense. The projections show that Miami's going to be a top 4 scoring offense this year. And I just think that just doesn't make sense for where Waddle's ADP is. Tua should, as Zach mentioned earlier, have some better positive TD regression luck this season. Waddle is what I would call a per route god, top 10 last year in first down route run, target route run, yards per route run, all elite wide receiver stats that you want to see. And again, he just experienced a lot of fluke injuries, in my opinion, last year. Not something that I think would be something that you'd say who he is. So he has the potential to be a low-end wide receiver 1. He's already done it. And I just think he's ranked way too low and set up to crush his ADP.
And for me, it's Malik Nabers. I absolutely love him. He was my favorite receiver coming out of this draft class, and he goes to a team where he is going to get all the opportunities. He's going to get all the opportunities because there's nobody else to catch the ball on that team, and they're not going to run the ball with Devin Singletary every play. So they're just going to be looked to throw the ball to him. I would not be surprised if he has over 160 targets this year. Now, they might not all be good, and they might be trailing in games, but they're going to have to continue to pass the ball. We've seen the Tom Savage corollary with DeAndre Hopkins, where he just constantly looked at DeAndre Hopkins, and he got force-fed the ball, which produced him to be the receiver that he was.
I like Waddle and Nabers, but one guy that's even further down the list that I really like is George Pickens. Diontae Johnson has now left the Steelers and gone to the abyss that is Carolina. And that leaves a very sparse receiving room that Arthur Smith probably can't even mess up. We got no other receiver besides George Pickens had more than 20 catches last year on that roster. And in 4 games without Diontae last season, Pickens averaged 8.25 targets per game. If you were to extrapolate that for a 17-game season, you're looking at about 140 targets. If you combine that with his elite 10.75 yards per target, you get 1,500 receiving yards on this season. Now, that might be a little optimistic. His efficiency is probably not going to stay that high if you were to get a volume increase. But I definitely think you could get a 1,300 yard season out of him. And that's better than somebody like Chris Olave. He's going rounds ahead of him. So my bold prediction this year is Pickens has more fantasy points than Chris Olave.
And sticky, and also a former teammate of George Pickens. You just mentioned him. Diontae Johnson is a guy that I'm targeting really late in drafts. I mean, he's almost free. He's like he was part of that horrible Pittsburgh passing attack last year, and he actually did okay. I mean, you also have to remember that he was placed on IR and he missed like 4.5, 5-ish games, and into the season okay. And he was a Pro Bowler in 2021. He had over 1,100 yards, and he's going to Carolina to take on the lead wide receiver role. They promised him he would be the lead guy when he signed with the team. And he's filling, and last year that number one receiver in Carolina had over 100 catches in Thielen. And I think that Diontae Johnson has an opportunity to do that as well.
I like that. All good picks there, guys. Something that I feel like a lot of people are going to be struggling with this year for a wide receiver battle is who do they take at the top? Tyreek Hill or CeeDee Lamb? Seems like it's a debate back and forth. So, Eric, who would you take between the two?
100% of the time, I'm taking CeeDee Lamb, and all of Dallas's offense is going through CeeDee Lamb. He could see 200 targets this year, and they're high-quality targets on a team that's going to score the ball. Tyreek is a good player, but he's older, so I'm going to side with the youth on this side and take CeeDee Lamb as well.
As much as it hurts my soul to pick a Cowboy, I'm also going CeeDee Lamb, simply for what Eric said. They basically use him as an extension of the running game. I don't think the running game is going to be great this year. It's just going to be a lot of manufactured touches for CeeDee Lamb.
And give me CeeDee as well.
Interesting. I also choose Lamb, but the drafts that I were doing last weekend, Tyreek Hill went ahead of Lamb in both of them, and Hill has the higher ADP, so it's interesting that we all like Lamb there. Another interesting battle that we might have is Rashee Rice versus Terry McLaurin. Both of these guys seem to be skyrocketing up the ADP boards over this last week. So I'll start with Zach. Who do you prefer there?
Well, I have to redeem myself after picking a Cowboy, so I'm going to go Terry McLaurin. And one reason is McLaurin's never really had a solid quarterback, and he still put up pretty good numbers, even with some just bottom of the barrel guys. So bringing in Jayden Daniels, who's a pretty good passer, who looked great in preseason, I think he's going to have possibly one of his best seasons.
I'm on the Rashee Rice side, and he's a part of a great offense. I know Washington has a chance to turn it around, but they're not going to be Kansas City. And even last year, I mean, the Redskins, like or the Commanders, they turned the ball over a lot, but I mean, they weren't an efficient offense, but they moved the ball, and his numbers were okay, but they were nothing special. Like nothing that I'm excited about.
I mean, as soon as Brissett came in for Howell, though, at the end of the season, Terry McLaurin took off. Howell just didn't target guys on the outside. That'd be my only counter to that.
And for me, it's Terry McLaurin. He is going to see plenty of targets this year. They just traded away Dotson to the Eagles, so they're going to be looking for him early and often. When he needs a first down, he's going to look for McLaurin, and when he's throwing that deep ball, which he throws a lot of them, he's going to be looking for McLaurin. So I love scooping up McLaurin late in my drafts.
Now, obviously, we just really went through the gauntlet there with a lot of those receivers, but are there any really, really deep players out there? I mean, not really, really deep, but outside that top 30 chunk. Anyone you like there, Marty?
Yeah, I like to scoop up Brian Thomas at the end of the draft. And I mean, a lot of that is because he's a rookie. He's got really high upside, and he has an opportunity to even be the number one receiver on his team, and on a team that I think could be a pretty good offense with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Joshua Palmer. I think people are overreacting a little bit to the Chargers' style of offense and thinking that they're just going to run it 100% of the time. And also overreacting to Lad McConkey, I think, a little bit, just because Palmer was there last year. He has the rapport with Herbert already, and I expect that that's going to continue, and he'll show that he's the number one wide receiver on that team.
And I'm going to have to side against Marcus, and I'm going to say Lad McConkey is an excellent value in these drafts. I think he has probably maybe the third best receiver in this draft class, footwork wise. And I think he's going to take over and be the Cooper Kupp in the Chargers offense pretty quickly.
I'm going to go with a guy who, coming out of college, I compared to Jaylen Waddle, and that is Jameson Williams. He had the knee injury that kind of set him back his rookie year, and then he had the whole gambling thing last year. This is the first season he gets to come in and really take charge of that number 2 role for one of the best offenses in the league. But if you want a really, really deep guy, then give me Khalil Shakir.
Wow, hot take there, everybody. Let's move on to tight ends. Here we have our top 12. I mean, I think these are the guys everyone knows them. Travis Kelce, Sam LaPorta. Everybody knows them, but is there somebody that we value in a little bit more elsewhere? I'll toss to Marty.
Yes, yeah, I love me some Dalton Kincaid. Gabe Davis gone. Stephon Diggs gone. There's a chance that Dalton Kincaid gets the opportunity to be the number 1 option in Buffalo, one of the best offenses in football. And I think he's got a great shot to finish as the number 1 tight end this year.
I go into every season or every draft wanting either Dalton Kincaid or this guy, Kyle Pitts. I think we kind of forget about what Kyle Pitts' upside was just a few years ago. I mean, when he came out of the draft, I was thinking he could be the Calvin Johnson of the tight end position. And he follows that up with a 1,000-yard rookie season. Then things started going poorly. Arthur Smith wrecked his career. He had a knee injury. He was splitting snaps at tight end with Jonnu Smith last year. He only had 2 games with a 75% snap share last season. Now that Jonnu Smith's gone, he's going to be out on the field, most of the game. And he's going to be catching passes from Kirk Cousins, a huge upgrade from what he was last year. And Cousins is a guy who loves targeting the tight end. TJ Hawkinson had 68 targets last year in the 8 games that he played with Kirk Cousins. That was on pace for nearly 140, which is really good for a tight end. And you could even go back to Jordan Reed being a premier tight end with Kirk Cousins as well. So the upside's definitely still there for Pitts. And he's only 23 years old.
Yeah, and for me, there's obviously a lot of elite tight ends this year, but a fallback plan of mine has been just taking Jake Ferguson if I miss out on tight ends. Not so much that I think he's going to be ranked higher than these other tight ends, but his ADP is going 3 full rounds later than these other tight ends that are just above him. The Cowboys project to be a top 8 points per game offense this year, and in my opinion, he's their number 2 target. Gallup and Pollard are gone, leaving 124 targets up for grabs. And that's something that I think will definitely help Jake Ferguson. Just 1 of 7 tight ends last year that earned over 100 targets. He led the league in what I would call high value targets, both red zone and end zone targets. He was top 3 in routes run. I think everything was set up for him to be a great tight end last year. And points per game and PPR, he was 8th in scoring. And I think what hurt him last year is he only scored 5 touchdowns, even though he led the league in those end zone and red zone targets. I think that can easily change this year, and you could potentially look at a top 6 tight end in scoring, and a guy that, again, is going 3 full rounds later than the other guys just above him. I just think that that's a little bit of a mistake, and if you miss out on the tight end train, Jake Ferguson's a great fallback plan.
Yeah, I think all 3 of those guys are good options in the middle rounds. But who do we like at the top? Travis Kelce or Sam LaPorta? What do you think, Eric?
For me, it's Travis Kelce. He's the number 1 option on that team. Sam LaPorta I like, but I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. And Sam LaPorta is the number 2 option on his team. So for me, I'm going to take Travis Kelce, get another. I know he's older, but give me another year.
And for me, it's LaPorta. I like the youth, and I'm all on Detroit's offense this year. So while I'm probably not going to take either of these guys, it's LaPorta for me.
Yeah, if forced to pick between the 2, we're splitting hairs. I would take Travis Kelce just for the having the Patrick Mahomes connection. Both offenses are stacked, but I think Kelce is a little bit more of Mahomes' go-to in the red zone, where LaPorta might have to share opportunities with Montgomery or Amon-Ra or just other guys. So very close, but give me Kelce.
Yeah, I think I'd take Kelce too.
And who do we like outside? Deep. Let me hear the Cole Kmets or the what have you. Hopefully I didn't steal yours, but you know what I mean.
One thing I'm doing at the end of my drafts is, especially if I miss the tight end train, is I'm scooping up TJ Hawkinson. And then once the draft's over, you can put him on your IR spot and pick up another player. And you get a guy who was really, really good before his injury.
Now, Jason, you said you wanted deep sleepers, right?
Yeah, so Cole Kmet might have not been deep enough.
Yeah, this is deep right here. I like Theo Johnson on the Giants, rookie tight end. Probably, honestly, not a guy I'm going to take in a standard league. I've drafted one redraft league, haven't taken him. But if you're in a deep enough league, or maybe it's a dynasty league, I love Theo Johnson. He's got 4.5 speed, has that the upside to put up wide receiver numbers at the tight end position. That's really what you're after. And they're saying he could be the starter week 1.
Wow.
Yeah, we've talked about a couple tight ends, Sam LaPorta and Dalton Kincaid. They were both rookies last year. Zach just mentioned another rookie. I don't typically like taking rookies, but this guy's going around the 10th overall tight end, Brock Bowers. He is playing tight end. He's playing in the slot. He's playing in the backfield. I just think he's going to have a lot of opportunity, so I'm thrilled to get him later in drafts if I miss on those first bulk of tight ends.
Now let's move on to the crystal ball bus. Who, and be as free as you want in this, but who are you scared of the most? Who you're like, man, even when there's value, I don't want that person on my roster.
Yeah, I will say the person that scares me absolutely to death is Anthony Richardson. I'm a fan of the Colts, but that guy scares me to death. I don't even know if he can throw the ball. I don't think he's very accurate, but it doesn't in fantasy football, it's not about can you play football as much as it is can you score fantasy points. And he can score fantasy points as long as he can stay healthy. So I hope he can stay healthy, and we'll see what happens.
For me, I'm going to say the one player that the idea of drafting him makes me want to puke is Puka Nacua, because his ADP is you're going to have to draft him at the beginning of the second round, and he's already has a knee injury. He's going to be sharing targets with Cooper Kupp. It just seems like to me there's a lot of room for downside at that point where you're drafting him.
And sticking on that team, for me, it's Kyren Williams. Obviously, this could come back to bite me. I mean, he was really good last year. He could do it again. But for where he goes in drafts, I think he's very risky just because he's got they drafted Blake Corum, a talented rookie running back that could easily steal a good chunk of his role.
But Marty, isn't he returning punts?
Is he? I don't know. That makes me like him a lot less if he's returning punts. I don't want my running back returning punts.
I think McVay just announced that he was returning punts yesterday. He's the punt returner.
Corum.
I'm interested to see if that's legit, because the Steelers said they might have the Steelers said they might have Justin Fields returning kicks earlier this year too.
I think it's because
to me it just seems odd.
Well, it's because of the new kickoff rule. I think that's what it is too. If that's part of it too, because I think those are more breakaway plays now. So they want to.
I mean, it makes sense to have a running back on kick returns, but just punt returns. I'm not really sure that's Kyren's.
I don't know.
Skill set.
And Kyren's more of a plotter. I don't think he's more of a slasher. I don't think he's got the speed.
Exactly. That's what I mean. You don't have plotters returning punts.
Yeah, he's not scary. I don't know. That's interesting.
Alvin Kamara also returned punts back in the day in his youth, and so there may be some value there.
Maybe someone should sign Percy Harvin. Well, let's move on to the next crystal ball picks. Who are you grabbing everywhere? All your leagues, whatever kind of strategy it is, or the PPR, half PPR. Who do you really like? Yeah. Who you find you can't stay away from?
For me, I've drafted a lot of Marvin Harrison Jr. this year, and I've also paired him a lot with Kyler Murray. So that stack, as you want to call it, is something that I've basically been grabbing in every draft. Both of them are fairly easy to get, a little bit more so with Murray. Harrison might be a little dependent on where position you're drafting in, but those are two guys that I think are ready to explode this year.
And my strategy is always to get a quarterback that can run the ball. Typically, I'm looking for Kyler Murray, but if he goes before I'm ready to take one, I'm grabbing Jayden Daniels. And I'm thrilled to get either one of those. And sometimes in Superflex, I can get both of those.
I really like Kyle Pitts. Just where you can draft him, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I honestly think he has league-winning upside. It'll probably be scary how many times I draft him this year.
Zach, how does Kyle Pitts affected if we lose Cousins? If he gets injured or he's not back all the way?
I think that's the beauty of it is you bring in Michael Penix. I think I just got an alert saying that Heineke's been traded, so it's going to be Penix.
Was it his dad that texted you, or
brother-in-law? But no, I don't even remember where he got traded. But he's no longer on the team, or maybe I'm making this up. I don't know. But either way,
true.
even
That's
if it was,
factual.
okay, thank you, Eric. An underrated thing about fantasy football is if your quarterback gets injured, who's the next guy coming in? I'd be fine with Penix.
Okay, I'm with you.
And a guy that I'm finding on a lot of my teams is Dalton Kincaid, just because he goes after that first group of tight ends, and I think he can easily be just as good. So usually that's my cue is when those top 2 tight ends are gone, and then some time passes, and I get the discount on Kincaid. I'm scooping up Kincaid.
And to follow up on Zach's news, Taylor Heinicke went to the Chargers.
That's right.
Big breaking news.
Huge breaking. Any other preseason news before we want to call this show, guys? Anything else? Final thoughts you want to talk about before we call it? Is that it?
Just make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel, boys. Let's do it.